what do you do as an email sender? The very first thing would be to authenticate your domain, authenticate your accounts properly, authenticate or be burned. Right here, you can see the sender policy framework. There's DKIM or domain keys identified mail, DMARC, reverse DNS, ARC. Some of these protocols you might already be familiar with. In fact, you might have already set up some of these protocols, some of these authentication protocols for your domains. There are a few ones that might be a bit strange, but they're not completely new. I'm going to quickly go across what these mean and why they're important. Or even if you set them up, it is not a bad idea to check to make sure that they're set up properly, to check to make sure that nothing has been changed by anyone who has access to your DNS records, your DNS management center. Just ensure that these are set up. For Sender Policy Framework, or SPF, it's a very important protocol. All SPF is about is that you as an email sender, you can list the IP addresses, the mail servers, the sending applications that are authorized to send emails from your domain. That's what SPF does. If you create an SPF record, you're pretty much saying these are the assets, the IP addresses, the mail servers, the applications that I have authorized as the owner of this domain. These are the assets that can send emails on my behalf authoritatively. And so whenever you send an email, what would happen is that the receiving email sender, the receiving email server of the recipient would do a check. They would say, okay, this IP address that this email is coming from, does it match with what so-and-so has published as an authorized asset to send emails on their behalf? If they check and the IP address doesn't match or the sending application is different from what you've authorized, they send the emails to spam. That's why it's very important. It's a simple text record. We will not talk deeply about how to go into your DNS management center and set up these things. We can always talk independently. You can contact me one-on-one. We can talk about how to do it. But what you need to know is that it's important that you do it. Because if you don't have an SPF record, receiving servers or ISPs and their spam filters cannot validate that these are the assets you have authorized to send emails from on your behalf. And if they can validate that, this email is coming from the right source, they send you to spam or they block the email entirely. So super important, SPF needs to be set up. For DKIM, DKIM is just as important as SPF. Some people choose to set up SPF or DKIM. Some people set up SPF and DKIM. I encourage that you set up both. Yeah, SPF and DKIM is best. Have more than one authentication protocol available. What DKIM does is once you set up a DKIM record, you're literally publishing a key. We call it a public key. You've published a public key. What would then happen is that every email you send out will be signed with an encrypted private key. And so when your emails try to go to your recipient and they try to go through your recipient server, what will happen is that the recipient will retrieve the public key that you have published and they will try to make a match. They will say, does the public key that we already have that has been published from this domain, does it match the private key that is attached to the email that claims to be coming from this domain? If they do the matching and it works, then you've passed DKIM and your email will be routed to the inbox. If they try and it doesn't work, which is the case of if someone is pretending to be you, that means the person is a spoofer, the person is sending emails, but it's not actually coming from your domain, it's just a pretend email, then they fail, that DKIM check and the emails are blocked or sent to spam. And so it's a super important protocol. It's not difficult to set up, but you set it up, you can ensure that you're protecting your domain from aggressors and spoofers and spammers, but also that you're giving ISPs the tools they need to validate that you are you and get your emails into the inbox instead of sending it to spam. So DKIM is very important. Reverse DNS. Reverse DNS is also super important. What reverse DNS does is that it makes sure that the sending IP address that your email claims to be coming from matches the domain that it also should be coming from. So it's just it's like a back check. It's saying, okay, sending IP 198.2.1.1. What is this IP attached to? Like, where is it coming from? Is it coming from google.com, onebox.ai, whatever? It does that matching, and of course, if the matching is correct, then you're authenticated. It's just a way to make sure that you don't end up landing in spam. Now, ARC or ARC is a bit of an interesting one. It's not one that is, discussed a lot out there. SPF, DKIM, DMARC are some of the most popular authentication protocols out there. Reverse DNS is also pretty popular, but ARC or ARC is not. The reason ARC is important is that if you forward emails a lot or you send emails to mailing lists, things will change with the emails. Like different parts of the emails could be changed by the intermediary servers responsible for performing this action. What ARC does is that it ensures that the authentication rights from the original email is preserved. And so through all the bypasses, we call it hops, through all the hops that happens between when you send the email to when it actually ends up with the recipient, ARC ensures that everything is recorded and the original authentication rights are preserved so that when it gets to the final recipient, that person doesn't think this email was changed. This email is not actually coming from the main person who sent it. And so because of that, the email might fail SPF or DKIM or the DMARC check and be sent to spam. So simple understanding, ARC just ensures that when you forward your email, so your email is just hopping all over the place between different email addresses, that everything that you have set up to authenticate that email from first base, that all that is preserved until it gets to the recipient so that the recipient doesn't cancel you or mark you as a spammer. They can still see that this email was really originally sent from this address. Everything is intact. The reason that there are a few changes is because this email was forwarded a few times. It is in the right places from the right person. Yeah. Now, most people might not really have to worry about ARC because ISP set it up. So Google is setting it up, rolling it out for its own users. Outlook is doing the same thing. But if you manage your own server, if you're, like you're doing this entire thing yourself, you're managing your own server, there are some resources out there that you can read to ensure that you understand how to set up your ARC and set it up properly. You might have to, of course, contact your ISP as well and communicate, but most of us are not managing our own servers. If you are, yeah, you would have to probably look into setting this up. But for most of us, Google, Outlook, yeah, they would handle that for us. The final thing I'll mention here in terms of authentication is Google has said that if you're sending from gmail.com as your email address, you should only send from the Gmail app or from apps that actually send through Google, like apps that actually reroute the email through Google servers. Some people have been known to use SMTP servers, so they're not actually sending through Google, but when they create the email, they in the from header section of the email, they name the email like it's coming from Google, but it's an SMTP server. If you do that, you're in trouble because Google is saying, coming February, which has literally come, we are changing our DMARC policy. What that means is that they're saying any email that isn't coming from the Google server should be quarantined, should be rejected. And so if you've been using an SMTP server, which means you're not sending from Google, but then you're labeling your emails like you're coming from Google, stop doing that. You're going to be in trouble. So either just send through Google, or if you use an SMTP server, don't pretend that it's coming from Google. Use it independently. Yeah.
So question regarding that last point, Daniel. So two parts. One only applies to gmail.com free addresses or any Google Workspace address?
It's going to be any Google Workspace. Yes. As long as you're going to be using Google servers, don't use Google servers. If you're going to use an external SMTP, don't pretend that you're using Google servers.
Okay. And what about using email clients, such as like a Microsoft Exchange, like a Outlook Exchange?
That's fine. If you're using like email clients or you're using, for example, email automation tools like Woodpecker or an Apollo, that you send, all those emails will still route the emails from Google servers, so you're fine. Yeah, you're not pretending. You're just all those emails. If I send an email, if I create a cadence or a sequence on Apollo, or I use like HubSpot or whatever, or I even use another email client and I just find a way to connect my email so that I can receive all emails from the same client, it's fine. You're not doing anything funny. But if you use an SMTP server, that's when you should be careful.
Got it.